Hey everyone, and welcome to the Unmodern Podcast, the podcast where we have unscripted, unapologetic, and uncomfortable conversations that affects everyday people. If you've ever had an outlook, thought, or an opinion that modern day society told you to be silent on, that you would get in trouble for, or if you've ever heard the words, probably shouldn't say that, then this is the podcast for you. My name is Alfred, a husband, father, and an adventure-seeking kind of guy who over the years has learned to have a positive outlook on life, regardless of what society throws at me. So if you're ready to listen, let's go. Joe, welcome to the Unmodern Podcast. How you doing, man?
Man, this is so cool, Alfred. It's been a while. I'm so stoked with what you've been doing with this podcast and everything on your journey, man. You're hitting it hard. You got the momentum. You're sharing like crazy. You're doing all the hard work. I mean, it's fun though, right? When it's purposeful. So it's cool to see you showing up, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries, man. I appreciate it. For those that don't know, Mr. Joe Fear here is the inspiration behind the podcast in terms of me actually pulling the trigger on it. For context, Mr. Joe is a podcast maestro, an expert, a person in the industry that knows his shit and has done the work. Man, I was looking at your website. You got over 500 episodes, 1.6 million downloads. I don't even know if that's up to date, to be honest, man.
Probably not.
Yeah, man. You're doing it, living the dream in beautiful, sunny San Diego, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, man. It's all I know. I grew up here, man. So it's like I've had to cut my teeth and figure out my own way here, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, that's for sure. Well, there'll be some stopovers everywhere, but the show that you're referencing, Hustle and Flowchart, it's been 7 years, almost 7 years. And yeah, it's like 550 episodes or something like that. It's crazy.
That's incredible, man. The word that comes to mind is pioneer, to be honest. Something where you had to cut your teeth doing it the hard way.
Yeah, it's like no platforms really were findable, I guess, like in terms of the content, you know. Starting out, years ago it was, and still to this day, I feel like podcasting, it's one of those mediums that are just, I don't know, it's like you got to figure out the marketing yourself. I mean, podcasting, been doing that since 2013, and that was a whole wild west of times when getting discovered on a podcast back then was tough. It's still tough, but it's come a long way. There's all these different platforms now. Back then, not so much. It was like Apple and Apple only. And it was actually like the days of whatever the pods were back then. We had to like load up songs, almost like self-select the episodes to listen to. Now it's like they're all just piped to you on all these platforms, you know, Spotify and things too. But yeah, dude, podcasting has been a journey. That's for damn sure. And Hustle and Flowchart, my show, it's 7 years, almost 7 years now. And that thing has evolved in itself and has helped me evolve in a lot of ways. And it's been kind of like my outlet, my expression, and that's why I keep it going. Used to have a co-host, Matt Wolf is his name, and he's gone off into the AI crazy land of YouTubing, and man, it's just wild. I love podcasting, and I know you've heard a lot from me, so maybe we'll talk about some of the things why I love about it so much. It's like, it's cool. It's brought us together in a much deeper way here too.
It's an authentic way of digesting content. It's very unfiltered in the sense of, or at least the podcast that I really gravitate to and listen to. I love the authenticity of it. It's not fake. It's usually people sticking within their lane to what they're good at, whether it's invoking conflict or emotion, or you get people that just allow their guests to do their thing. But you get the hosts of Joe Rogan, and he's usually referenced as a podcast guy because he does it. He's the guy. He challenges people's narrative too. And I love that. I love where he can come from a place of experience. And the same thing with you. You bring subject matter experts on your podcast to talk about really what your niche is, but you kind of take it in a direction that applies to everyday people. And I think that's your superpower. That truly is. Anybody from selling Tupperware to doing $100 million online business, I feel like they would get value from 80-90% of your episodes to a degree. The other aspect of your episode that I want to highlight for people that don't know, Hustle and Flowchart on Spotify, Apple, all the podcast platforms. It's a phenomenal way, I feel, that people can scale. That's the term that you use, where what you talk about in your podcast it's a lot different than what you hear of a lot of people when they talk about $100 million business, like the Hormozis or the highlighted people. They talk in a language that doesn't make sense. They talk in generalities, or they'll use the term scale, but then they won't explain it. They won't give an example, or they won't give an anecdotal experience that person may have had. They'll just generalize it, and then they'll either sell a program, or they'll talk about how they turned a $1 billion business into a $10 billion business. And it's very hard to compute at the very common peasant level, I guess would be the best way to describe it, right? Whereas you have a really great way of, I think your opening statement is, you're not here to create $1 billion business for people. You're here to find balance, where if you want to make the same amount of money, but maybe work 20 or 30% less, this might be a tactic you can employ. Or if you want to earn that additional 20, 30% while putting in the same amount of effort, you're scaling and upgrading your business, but you're not doing it in an unmanageable way. And that, to me, is your absolute superpower. And I love it, dude.
Thank you, man. Thanks for seeing me, because that's how I want to be seen. That's how I want to present myself to myself first, and then to everyone else. Because that's the latest evolution of the show. Because for a long time, it was the hustle part was real. It was a lot of tactics. It was a lot of like, go, got to learn the nitty gritty, get in the middle of it all, which is great. But at the same time, I guess the flowchart side of things, and this is me attaching meaning to the show name has had like so many meanings over the years, but like, this is how I see it now, is like, you got to have flow in your life, and business can't drain you, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And we have a choice. It's how we show up. And Alfred, the group that we're in, the inner circle with Trev, Mike, and the whole gang there, that's been such a solid foundation for me this year, with a big transition from moving away from having a partner, having a business partner in everything I do, a co-host on the podcast, and then finding my own voice as a solo host now through the podcast. I've had to I chose to reinvent the way I look at things in business, because I found I was hustling, grinding way too much. And I don't know, in a way, it was almost like trying to be something that I wasn't or didn't really want to be, which was like the feeling of like, I gotta go big, I gotta hustle and grind and do all this crazy complicated stuff, like the scale that you're talking about. But then realize, like, you know what, business really should be the fuel for your life. Your life comes first. You're the foundation of everything. It's how you show up for others through your business. It's a vehicle to spread your message, and then from that ripple effect, you can literally change lives. And I'm just choosing to focus on entrepreneurs and ones that at least value that side of things. Shit. I mean, like, if they want to scale to $1 billion, by all means, go for it. And I know I have some friends that are after that, and they'll probably get there, and that's cool. And I've had them on the show too, but at the same time, it's like bringing that perspective in, and then still figuring out, like, all right, so what is it that makes these people tick, in myself as well, so they can show up for the greatest way they can for their own being. Some people are just wired to go hard and scale, and that's cool. I wouldn't ever want to slow someone like that down. But at the same time, it's the burnout, or the people that are like trying to be, like you said, like the Alex Hermosis, or these billionaire chasers, or beers, I guess. It's like, it's not made for everybody, and that's all right. We can make it ourselves, and it's like understanding who we are. So that's been my latest evolution. And you've been a big part of that, bro. So I got to give you a hats off for that. I don't have a hat right now. You do, but.
I love that. And to put that into digestible for my audience, and the feedback that I've gotten from the people that listen to this podcast, is a great example of that in the podcasting course you allowed me to partake in, which brought a ton of value, is something simple like putting digestible content, but sellable, simplistic content in email signatures. That's a great way of putting hyperlinks to Google Drive docs or to your Dream 100 list. I know that was a really cool concept that you brought onto me. I know you're not the creator of that concept, but you really shared it with us, of creating 100 idealistic guests that you would love and shoot for the moon on a podcast. And that doesn't even need to be a podcast. If you're a regular everyday person, if you're in sales, what are some people you'd love to talk to? Put them in your email signature, and for people to see what you're up to, and to click it and be like, wow, this person wants to talk to Donald Trump, or this person wants to talk to the Alex Hermosis of the world, or whatever. And I think that's just a really cool concept, a tangible way for me to tell anybody listening to this, try that.
Mm,
Put anything in there. If you have a landing page to sell a service, if you have even something like a giveaway or something, just make it digestible and easy for consumers to buy a product, buy a service, or even get to know you that much more. That was a super simple hack, and I haven't actually updated it. It's in my calendar to do it on Friday this week,
cool.
actually. So I'm really stoked about that. And that's just a really simple hack that you shared with me that is a very easily digestible. It's not a hidden message where people, again, when people are selling stuff and they talk, do you want to be your best self? And they give all these hidden notes where it's like, I think I understand what they're saying, but I'm not really sure. I guess I have to buy the course to find out. That was a very easy way for me to understand it very quickly, very easily understandable and legible from a very basic standpoint, no matter the size of your business, no matter what you're doing. That was a
Yeah.
really cool one that I wanted to give to anybody listening to this.
Yeah, I can go deeper on that concept as well and kind of bring it in. So I'll just map it out really quick. So if anyone wants to swipe it, I think it'd be super helpful. And yeah, you don't need to be a podcaster. You don't need to be I mean, it'd be helpful if you have a business behind it because then you can monetize. But at the same time, you don't need to. It could be a passion thing or just to connect with, honestly, anyone you want to. So this Dream 100 concept, like you mentioned, Alfred, it's adapted from a guy named Chet Holmes who came up with this Dream 100 concept, but I just applied it here. And essentially, the idea, like you said, is to connect with anyone you want and to leverage your network, the people that you're already talking with, connected with in email or social or person to person, and put 100 names. Could be 50, it could be less, but it's like put 100 names of people that you would love to connect with and shoot for the moon. They don't all have to be huge names. Like maybe there's some folks that are like a connection or two away from you that you think you'd just be stoked to connect with for whatever reason. Maybe you have, like I said, product service, but ideally you have something to invite them to, or maybe get them featured somehow, get them media, get them some exposure to people that you kind of have that control over, like how you can help them get more awareness. Because people are always people love to connect with other people that value them, but at the same time, obviously have something of value for them as well. So like for you and your podcast, Alfred, like it's a no-brainer. Yeah, you stack a bunch of names on here and you show your value through your podcast and you invite them onto your stage, essentially, your virtual podcast stage, you know? I've done this for my podcast for years now. And what's really cool is I'll put the names like Elon Musk on there or Bill Gates or, some out there shots. And I think it said this in the course, but it's like, I've never connected with any of those folks, but I have connected with a whole bunch of other people on the list or people like those people. So I actually got connected to Elon Musk's old roommate in college through like a different bookkeeper that we were interfacing with. And they're like, actually, I know. So it's like you never know who's in your network or who's kind of close to you unless you put it out there. So the point is put all these names on a Google Sheet. That's what I prefer and suggest here. Because a lot of us are using these Gmails. If you're not, it's okay. Not out of luck. But if you're using it's like a Google-based email, could be a work email as well. If you put all those names on a Google Sheet and define the people that you think would be great for your audience and you can give value to, know that those names could open up a whole bunch of other names that people can refer to. And what you do is you plug in the link to that sheet in your email signature. So it's attached to every single email that goes out. Whenever you're sending a basic email to anyone, could be your colleagues, friends, whoever. Now it's going to put this little preview, this little attachment to the email that kind of it's intriguing. It's like, what's this little attachment that Alfred put to this email? It says Dream 100. People like, do you know anyone? That it's like if you keep it kind of open like that, people are like, what the hell is this? And you can make the link say that in your signature as well. And just with that move alone, I've gotten so many different referrals coming my way where it might be someone on the list or it might be a handful of people that are similar to the people on the list. You're immediately getting warm introductions to folks that are relevant to the people that you're looking for. And typically the connections that you're seeing in your email, they're probably going to trust you. They're probably going to know enough about you to like, all right, Alfred would be really cool if he chatted with this person and had him on the podcast or just got to know him and figured out how to collab on something together. And that's essentially it. You could share it on social, share it with pretty much anyone in your circle. And it's a cool, organized way to show people how you want to show up and who you want to connect with. And It's all about who you know. I mean, it's like the common saying, but now you can be intentional about it. And this is the way I do it.
I love that. And I think it's also a hack for people mentally too, where if you have a very diverse list and you have the home run guys like the Elons and the Bill Gates and the Bezos of the world and all those guys, but then also maybe on the same list, you have the mayor of your town. And then I think it'd be a really cool concept that if you have a list where you're able to talk to somebody on the list that's also on a list with Elon and stuff, I feel like almost psychologically that would make you feel like you're getting to that person, or you're on your way up to maybe being on not necessarily the same level, but perhaps being on the radar, or the radar of somebody who knows them, or maybe an ex-engineer at SpaceX or something crazy like that. And I feel like that would be a really cool concept. You don't need to maybe go on a list like 1 to 100 and have the lowest name at the 100. I don't think you need to play that game. But I think that would generate momentum and generate drive and generate, holy crap, people are seeing this. People are referring me, or people are telling me maybe to hook up with this person who knows that person, and do a little bit of homework and find out who are some people local to you that are realistic, people that are relevant to whatever your goal, your business, your strategy, your dream, whatever it may be. I just think that's a super cool concept, and I loved it. And that really stuck with me. And like, I'm still working on mine. I think I have about 70 names on mine. And but yeah, you just chip away at it. And I think it's just such a really simple, cool concept. And you provide it in an Excel, Google Drive, very simple to fill out. So I appreciate that, man. That was super cool. And I just, anybody who's listening to this, that's just a really easy way, low effort, but to get exposure. And who knows, you may not get feedback for it for a couple months, but then maybe you might even forget about it. And somebody says, holy crap, I seen that you wanted to talk to the mayor. My brother works in their office. That's super cool. Something simple. And that's just a really, really cool concept.
Yeah. And this is having a podcast or some outlet is helpful. I'm not going to say everyone needs to have a podcast or something like that. But, if you have one, or if you have a blog or a YouTube channel, I mean, everybody's got Instagram brands. And now it seems it's like, well, invite people onto those. You can do all these collabs on any platform that you kind of choose or that you find yourself gravitating to. So harness that, and then just be intentional with the people you want to collab with, because it just makes it easier when you're co-creating. I feel like it's richer for everybody, and then you get that bigger spread of the message out there.
That's super cool. So that was a really cool little hack that anybody who's listening, check that out. You did mention earlier too, the inner circle with Extremely Conscious. That's something that me and you have been in since the beginning. For anybody that doesn't know, me and Joe have actually never met in person, but you would never know, because I feel like we're kindred spirits, dude. No joke. It's we're both girl dads. We're both motivated guys. We both have businesses. We just align on so much stuff. And you've been a pillar, dude. You've been this guy that lives in this sunny state in the US, busy life, but you're so grounded, dude. And you talked about evolution, and we were actually talking about it this morning in the inner circle. We share daily prompts with each other, and we kind of support each other in that way. So we literally talk to each other every day. It's pretty incredible. And where I was going with this is, with that inner circle, we've seen a lot of growth, but I feel like you're on this trajectory of just shooting for the stars, man. And it's such an inspiration to look at somebody who, your backstory, which we're going to get into here right away, you have every reason to come up with, call it an excuse, call it burnout, whatever you want to say, even though that is your niche of learning to recognize that and manage that. Anybody who would look at your schedule, look at your life, look at everything you have going on, they'd say, how, where do you have the time? And this really interesting phrase that I came across a few months ago, and I know I shared it with you, but you might not remember, is somebody mentioned that the person working at McDonald's has the same amount of time in a day that Elon Musk has.
That's right.
He doesn't have more time. Like there's 24 hours in a day. That's what you get. Maybe he sleeps less than you. Maybe he leverages other partnerships, but you have the exact same amount of time in your day. And this came when we were auditing our time within the group. For people that don't know, you can go on your Apple or Android phone, and you can actually break it down, how much time you're spending on your phone per app, what you're doing. And there was a couple times on there where it was like 6-7 hours when we first started. And I think we all got it down to about 3 or 4. Yeah. But like, if I told a person that you could create 2 or 3 additional productive hours in your day, I think it would absolutely shock them. I really do. Yeah. And for you, like working out every day, we're doing breath work every day. We're checking in with each other every day. Sometimes it's 1 o'clock in the morning when you're driving back from a mastermind. Like,
gotta do it, man. I know. and then get up
But
at 5:30 the next morning.
exactly. And this is this new evolution that we're in on the inner circle. But where I want to highlight this is you're the type of person that has every reason that somebody looking at this be like, how does this guy do it? So I don't know if you want to just share people with that, your growth from when the inner circle first started and
Yeah.
reason, and really the reason why we reached out to something like this. Because now if you told me that you weren't in the inner circle anymore, I still think you'd have tools to be much better than when we first started.
100%. Yes.
And then yeah, so if you could just share with that, like what an average day looks like, how you time block your day, and really how you leverage that to be the most productive self, but still also be grounded. And yeah, I love that, because you're
Cool.
the epitome of where people may look at that and say he shouldn't be able to do that. Where does he have the time? But you make it work.
I don't know how I do it, bro. No, I do. I have a good idea, but I look at my calendar usually every day. There's a lot of things. So what I want to do is I'll tell you what I'm doing right now, like what you just asked and what you set me up for. And then I think after this, let's get into kind of like what led me to this point. Because I think, well, I know there was a major breakdown, multiple breakdowns happening before all of this. So this year, 2023, what was it, like February or something? We all jumped in this thing together. So yeah, right around there. So I knew Trevor prior to and trusted him. And he was reaching out to me, telling me, yeah, there's this group coming up and a bunch of guys that, oh, it's not even a bunch. It was a handful of guys, just a group of guys that were getting together with this shared thing. And it's essentially to be wealthy in all areas of life and be very intentional, be conscious about things. And so fast forwarding to kind of where I'm at right now. So I'll just like do a quick recap. Like beginning of the year, I didn't have any systems dialed in. I was coming out of a business that I had with a partner for, it was like 10 plus years, kind of off and on, different avenues with him. But either way, it was always like a partnership and we were there supporting each other along the way. And still a great friend of mine, Matt, I mentioned him earlier. And so the podcast was in a place, and honestly, the podcast, I mentioned my Hustle Flowchart podcast, is this pillar that has allowed me to, and it's almost like forced me to keep going and stay focused. And like I mentioned before, it's been an outlet. And I was close to giving it up. And I had a mentor of mine, James Schramko, he's out in Australia, great business coach. And he was like, and this is like one of the pretty close to the exact words he told me. I think it was like maybe December-ish or late November. And he was like, what's going on? He just wanted to check in with me. And this guy's consulting with people for a lot of money. He was like, Joe, we got to chat. I'm like, all right. So, and he was like, so what everything you guys did was great. But what we did, honestly, just a quick pivot, is like we literally pivoted our business from this entrepreneur marketing space. And we went deep into the crypto, Web3, and like blockchain metaverse space, which is exciting and fun and all this stuff. But at the same time, we completely left behind a network and an audience and all of these, and kind of alienated people in a way that it wasn't right. I just, in retrospect, is like, it was just and what we did is it was a very tough time. And I guess I'm kind of going back into the backstory just slightly. But the point is, he told me, he was like, you guys chose to go play out in the forest and have fun over there, try something new. And you left this castle with all the gold bricks, which is the podcast. And that's still there. He was like, you could still go back and claim the castle and claim all, and like the audience being the gold bricks, because he's done the same himself. He's revamped a show multiple times. And he's like, it doesn't just go away. Podcasts are cool in that regard. It's like there's that bond, that connection, subscribers, all these things. And so I took his advice and I thought, I'm like, how would I do this myself? And what does that look like? And that's where the whole like burnout, finding fuel for your life through your business. But really it starts with me. So saying all that, I just wanted to kind of preface that and fast forward to where I'm at now. I mean, really, this whole year has been a year of figure out what my message is. So that's like start on the podcast. And then it's like, how do I sustain that message where it's not all on me to do all the things? Because it can be a lot of work, especially the way my brain works. I think I know too much, where I'm just like, all right, shit, I got to figure out like the video component. I want to do the blog post right, redo the website, got an email list, connect with awesome people in my network, because I'm blessed with a freaking phenomenal network that I've curated and hustled and grind to create for 10 plus years, almost 15 actually. And for a while, like for a good couple years, I felt like I just kind of neglected that whole network. I was like, holy shit, they're the ones that brought me here. I'm like, why would I ever do that? And so this year was kind of like recalibrating myself and tapping back in and finding who I am as a solo host and also someone in business. And at the same time, knowing that I wasn't showing up for my family properly the last like handful of years. I was feeling stressed. I wasn't providing or allowing enough energy to go to them. I was too consumed in my own stuff. And it was business. Some stuff before that was emotional. We'll talk about some family stuff I went through. And really now, and because of the group has been a huge rock, the inner circle, because of the micro habits, like these things that we do every single day. It's like 10 plus items. And like you mentioned, breath work, working out, just hydration, getting enough sleep, journaling, all this self-reflective work. It's allowed me to kind of see these patterns that I had that I was walking around with. And I feel like my emotions were getting in the way too often, or I would default back to some past stuff and then that would get me stuck. So I wouldn't move forward. So that's like a whole reframe there. It's been a bunch of reframes this year to the point where it's kind of all this stuff is snowballing, I guess. And a way to say it is like the business side, I was finding my voice. The network was starting to see what I was doing. I was expressing myself through the podcast more. I was just putting myself out there more. And what do you know? When you do that, anybody does that, like that's, I guess, a takeaway or an action point is like, just start expressing, just start sharing shit, like everywhere, anywhere, whatever your modality is. Could just be Facebook or Instagram stories, whatever. Just start like turn on the microphone, the camera, and share what's true, because the people, someone will connect, and then that person knows another someone, and then it goes from there. And that's where I found myself now, Alfred, is like, yeah, I get invites to masterminds or I'm in groups where if I'm expressing myself and sharing my wins and stuff, which was like an example last night, I had like 4 people around me that are very high level business owners, multi-million-dollar businesses, and they're hearing about my podcast and like some of the cool shit that's happening. Like HubSpot just included me into their podcast network. So that's cool. It's going to give me distribution to millions of people, and who knows where that'll go. But I'm like, just going to throw my hat in there and see where it takes it. And I'm going to do the best I can. And just things like that. I'm just like, if I put it out there, the right things are going to come. And then, yeah, quickly my schedule can look a little wonky and crazy. So that comes to getting intentional about how I want to build my day. And family's first for me, and making sure, I guess it's family, but self. Honestly, it's self. It's like that whole oxygen mask principle. It's like, if I don't show up for myself, if I'm not kind to myself, compassionate, with getting enough rest and sleep, or just taking some time off to play, hang out with my dog who's next to me. Like there's like things like elements I'm integrating into my life where before it was just like work. And usually it was like in another office or in some other house where we'd all work together. And I just felt like there was there was a line. Now it's like I've integrated family, home life, working out. Like I have a gym right behind me. So I break throughout the day and I'll bust out part of the 100 push-ups that we do every single day, or a workout for 20 minutes, hop on the mic and share some stuff or do breath work. It's like, I try to integrate all that stuff into the days of like having multiple podcasts like I do today. Like I'll do this, I'll hop on a call after this, but like, I know things are time blocked and I have intentionality around it all. And I don't beat myself up if I don't stick to everything. I think that's the thing, is like I'm kind to myself, and this is my work in progress now. Luckily, my wife always reminds me, hey, be kind to my Joey. It's what she tells me. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. You know, it's always that reminder. I can't have the go energy all the time, because that literally would just break down me internally and just not feel good. And that's not why I'm doing this anyway. But at the same time, there's an outlet, and I see it as a game, like Alex Hormozy talks about playing the game. Sure, it might be the billionaire game that he's playing, but I don't know. It's fun, you know, when you see like things starting to happen, synchronicities, people showing up that want some advice or support from something that's kind of like I created or something that is a superpower of mine. It's really understanding that and then tapping into that and then creating some structure around it. That's not too rigid. It's like rigid but flexible at the same time. Anti-fragile. I think that's a book that kind of talks about that concept a little bit.
No, I love that, dude. When you talk about a full day, I know for me, before we started the inner circle, the amount of times that I would spend on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, really just mindless stuff, watching people play video games.
I
Like
gotcha.
something simple like that, where like I know Twitch is massive and you have people literally just watching other people play video games. It's this mindless, non-productive. And I'm not saying don't do it, because if it excites you in that video game or whatever you're watching, if that content is exciting for you, that's fantastic. But I find myself now, and you're probably the same, as if I was to compare beginning the inner circle and now, the amount of stuff that I do that I thought was for me. I thought this is my time to decompress. This is my time to get that vice. This is my time to get that little escape. I've reframed that escape now in being something that truly benefits me, whether it's my physical, my mental, my emotional, my psychological, whatever it may be. And you mentioned it, we do have a spreadsheet with micro habits, is what we refer to them as, something like reading 10 pages a day, doing 100 push-ups, breath work, meditation, or whatever. And everybody's is different. We curate it to really suit our needs. And it's changed. We've had it, I think, for 10 months now, and I've had 10 different versions of it. But we change, and it's grown. And if I was to compare my spreadsheet from month 1 to now, and I look at my percentages, they're likely about the same, but my metrics have increased. I'm doing more push-ups. I'm getting more sleep. I'm spending more time with family. And that has eliminated the space for anything that's not serving me right now. I'm still spending the same amount of time a day. I still live 24 hours a day. That's the clock. It never changes, but it's much different. My day looks different. It's busier, but I can now take on more stuff. And I think that's where you were getting at. You talk about HubSpot, masterminds. Before the inner circle, there might have been some things on there that maybe you were YouTubing yard work, or maybe you were looking up some other stuff, and you kind of look back and you're like, what was I doing? And part of that is the grind. There are going to be times in your development that there's going to come a day or a week where you just got to go. You just got to get after it, but recognizing it and getting ahead of it. So for me, that's been a massive breakthrough for me, where I'm still on YouTube. I still do those sorts of things, but a lot of times, rather than watching, I don't know, the highlights of a football game for 15 minutes, I'll spend 15 minutes YouTubing how to create an Excel spreadsheet on how to extrapolate data from a program or something simple like that. That serves me in the long run. I'm still learning. I'm still getting it. I may not be getting my kicks, so to speak, but I'm more intentional with that time where I can stack those wins. And I feel that's been the breakthrough for me, because I feel like I'm busier than I ever have been, but I'm also producing at a higher rate than I ever have in my life.
And do you feel good about it?
Exactly. It generates momentum. It generates this urge to know that if I take 15 minutes in the morning to just meditate or breathe and just get out of my own head, I feel a reset. I feel energetic. I feel the best version of myself. So I don't get down on myself where I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the space. Yeah. It's these fallacies we tell ourselves, and it's not true, but you hit the nail on the head where it's self first. And I fucking love that oxygen mask concept. That is super fucking cool, because everybody can relate to that. It's incredible. It's unbelievable, because I'm going to put the mask on my wife and child, but I'm going to die. And that's my last act of service. Like, that makes no fucking sense. Like,
they don't want that. They want you to be there and to be that rock, or not even the rock, but just to be there for them. Yeah. And shit, I love that, because I guess I'll talk about, like, I would have a lot of guilt if I wasn't showing up for my family and being the best that I felt like I could be, because I would, whatever, it could be work getting in the way or something else. But yeah, I think, and then there was, for a while, it was guilt about, like, oh, breath work, where I could be hanging out with my family or something, or doing a workout, but it's like, oh, I could be doing something else with them to show up, clean the house or yard work or whatever. But it's like, yeah, the reframe I had, and I think this is through having honest conversations with my wife, and she knows my intention for the family and for everything is, like, I need to show up for me. And it's very obvious if my energy is off, it's like dark energy. I can't bring that to them. I don't want it for myself, but I sure as hell don't want to push it on other people. And I know that if I'm not getting myself to, like, this baseline, content, neutral level with my emotions first, because I feel like I am very emotional as a person, or at least I internalize these things. It's not like I'm all crying my eyes out all the time, but it's more like I feel it. Like, I take on emotions, and I know that myself. And through practices like meditation, breath work, all these things where I'm being intentional and then also expressing that with a group of people that understand the journey, and we're all going through our own. But man, it like cleared a lot of shit, which is really cool. And I'll give a little tool. So Jordan Peterson's self-authoring program, even if you just do like a fraction of it, you're going to start to see like these like holy moly moments, you know? And for me, it was really diving into my past and these things that I felt like were very low points, high points, but either way, impactful points that I think my brain would remember or maybe go back to in certain stressful times, or if I'm challenged in something, be it in business, be it with my wife or my kids. Yeah, now I feel like I'm way more just neutral, and not meaning I don't care, but I'm like, I've cleared that. I'm aware of things from my past and I know where I want to go. Like I know how I want to show up, and it's up to me to fucking show up that way because no one else can regulate my own emotions or regulate my internal being and state, because I want to express myself to everyone in my highest power. And the way I found it is just, yeah, like the practices we've been putting in every single day. And it's a grind. Doesn't necessarily get easier either. Like what you said, things change. The numbers aren't necessarily going up. And I used to beat myself up over it. Like, I got to get 100% every day. I got to check all the boxes. And to be honest, I've been dog shit at checking boxes lately. But saying that, I think I've been making way more momentum and progress throughout everything. And I think we all have too. It's like you get these evolution points, and through the self-awareness, stripping away old layers and then figuring out what to stack back on, but in, you know, new versions of your skin or whatever I'm thinking of like Transformers now and all this other shit. So it's crazy. But what I've found is like this year, it just proves to me that you can change yourself, and it's up to you making a choice to commit to you, and then also commit to what is it that matters to you in your life around you, your family, your friends, your business, whatever, your community, something that you can really have an impact and ripple with.
And speaking of the past, people might listen to this episode up to this point and be like, man, this Joe guy's got life figured out and Alfred's on his trajectory and life is all good. But you and I both know it was not always the case. And everyone has a past. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a turning point in their life. And I'd love to kind of trail this podcast more to your past, because I feel like that is such a powerful symbol to people, that no matter the Mount Everest or no matter what obstacle you're facing, that you think that maybe you have it worse than anybody else. There's people out there that have it worse than you, man. Truly, truly do. And rarely, I would actually make the statement, never in your life, if you have a really bad problem or you have a mountain that you feel you can't climb, that standing still and doing nothing is a solution. It never is. It never is. And it's all about people. It's all about community and connection. And I'd love for you to just go back as far as you want, really, your whole girl dad experience, the story around your father, if you're willing to share that, all that stuff. Go back as far as you want, really, a moment that you feel like you can start and move forward with that. Because your story, dude, is inspirational to me. It truly is. It's such a mountain that I look at and I'm like, man, this guy came out not only on the other side, I don't want to say unscathed, but not on the other side alive, but better than you ever have been. These polarizing words like destiny, faith, all this sort of stuff just comes to mind when I think of this stuff, where it's like, there's no way there isn't a higher power or a bigger being or a purpose towards Joe, or he has a mission. It all aligns with it. So yeah, start off wherever you feel like, but I can't wait for people to hear this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where I've told it in so many ways. And like I mentioned, that self-authoring program, like it's really helped me find neutrality with all these things. And it's also brought up a bunch of other shit. So where to go? I'll just say the last like 4 years. Yeah, 4 years is probably 5 years. I'll add another one. It's been like this crazy swings of up and downs. And I start with 5 years because I lost one of my best buddies. He died at the age of 37, I think, and drinking, just treating his body like shit. But it wasn't just that. He had a whole troubled childhood. It's my boy, Peter, and I got to give him some love because, I mean, I got a picture of him in my garage along with my dad, which I'll get to in a moment. And like every day I work out, I always say, I give him a what up, you know, and give him some love, both the guys. And yeah, so that was the first point when I was like, holy crap, this is a guy I literally went to preschool with. I grew up like way young with this guy, lived in the neighborhood. And one of the things that I think that got him on this troubled kind of, I don't want to say trouble because it wasn't his fault. Like, it's not usually our faults, but it's just something happened. His brother committed suicide when he was in middle school. His brother was in high school. And I remember that point being like, what the fuck? What does that mean? Like, that was the first time I thought about death and like, what's it like? Is it just blackness, like a void? Like, what goes down, you know? As a kid, and I was in elementary school, so I was a little younger than Pete, and that was like the first time, and I was having chats with my dad about things and stuff like that, and just like, man, I don't get it, you know? And that was just confusion. And I remember that being like just something. It was in my head, you know? Fast forward, my parents got divorced when I was in middle school, and I was kind of right in the middle of all of that. And then that was the first point where I felt more responsibility because I was essentially becoming the man of the house at far too young of an age from what I was wanting. So in reflection, that's where I realized like weird anger came out. Like there was this like interesting side of me which never really appeared before. I was more of a shy kid and kind of continued that way until early mid high school, which is weird because I was just talking to a buddy yesterday, and we were talking about this one of these guys in the mastermind that was kind of like stuttering, just not a super smooth speaker. And I was like, dude, I used to be like that. But guess what helped out? Podcasting and playing in a band in front of people and putting myself out there, expressing. It's all the shit that I've been talking about. And he's like, you really? I'm like, yeah, like it's true. So you can change yourself. But the point, I felt like life was almost going a little bit too quick in a lot of ways. And dad not being around because he ended up, years later, moved to the East Coast, so didn't really have him around a lot. And always loved the guy. He was I don't know. I felt like he became more of a friend in a lot of ways than a father figure at that point, which was tough because that's confusing. So it was, like I said, a lot of responsibility, a lot of confusion. So I think that was happening in those years, like middle school to high school. And then it's like, yeah, band and all this fun stuff kind of started happening. So I gravitated to my friends a lot. But that led me to entrepreneurship ultimately. That's kind of how I met up with my buddy Matt through band friends. And then that kind of kicked off that journey into this space ultimately. But then let's just say the last 5 years. So back to Peter. So I lost him. That was that was a massive shock, being like, holy shit. Okay. Only like 37 years old. That's not that old. And I just saw what life did to him. And I think he couldn't get past like losing his brother really young, having a hard childhood. I mean, there's a lot of anger there too. So in a lot of ways, I was like, holy shit moment for me to figure out like, what are the things I'm ignoring, maybe patterns or things that I haven't gotten past. And this didn't really like totally clarify at that moment. But now in retrospect, this is why it was so impactful. So it was about a year later after that, October 2019, it was, what was it, the 8th, I believe. I got a knock on the front door at like 6 a.m, and it was a dude in business attire. But then I was like, who the hell's knocking at the door? And he was like looking in the window and stuff like that. And I'm like, because at first I was like, I'm not going to open it, you know? And I was like, okay, I better open this door, you know? And he was like, are you Joseph Fear? I'm like, mm-hmm. He's like, is your father Joseph Fear? Because he had the same name. And yeah. It's like, well, he died yesterday. And I was like, oh, okay, tell me more, please. Because it was a week before that I talked with him, my dad, and he was in South Carolina. So other coast from me in California. And yeah, he committed suicide. He basically, there was no other indication, no note, no nothing, but it was just boom, like something happened. Still to this day, don't know why. It's crazy. But I think in retrospect, there's a lot of things that I saw in his habits changing and just a lot of stuff over time. He didn't seem like him anymore, like that last call, and really even like the year leading up to that point. And this guy was an avid runner. He played music all the time, super social, super fun. He worked at a hospital and then decided to quit and basically go move and hang out with a girlfriend of his in a different town. So it's like it kind of uprooted him in so many ways. He used to cook all the time, like dreamed of food, of like homegrown, like not homegrown, but everything from scratch. Like the guy would have literal dreams. Like I remember as a kid asking him, like, what did you dream about last night? And he was like, I'm going to make the best chicken enchiladas with blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're weird, man. But that's awesome. And he came through. He was a great cook. And I learned a lot. That's what makes me want to cook more. And I know you have a passion for that as well.
Yes,
And
sir.
yeah, dude. So all this stuff he stopped doing. Like I think, like literally the last call, he was saying he was getting Burger King for their dog that wasn't feeling too good. But I'm like, fucking Burger King? Really? Like, this doesn't sound like you. Like, he would never touch fast food and all this stuff. Point is, I was like, this is weird. And back to learning that my dad just committed suicide, I was in shock, didn't know what the hell was going on. So there's that. 2 weeks later, I had the birth of my first daughter. Just like, huh? So literally it was a pop pop, double whammy, super low moment, super high moment, but still a very confusing moment all the way through. And prior to having my first daughter, we have been doing IVF treatments for, I think at that point, like 7 years, maybe 6 years, and tons of tries, tons of money out front. We did fostering actually prior to all this. I kind of skipped over that, but we fostered a handful of kids, one for 15 months. So it's a crazy journey there. So that was like, it's just been wild. But the point is, we have our daughter and she's freaking phenomenal and still is. And that was a point where I just lost my dad, got my daughter. I'm like, what the hell is going on? You know, and then right after that, COVID hits. And then this whole like world pandemic shutdown. So then it's like a whole another layer of crazy going on. And again, confusion. So throughout all this time, here I am like analyzing what the fuck is going on. And business, what I was doing was just honestly work that I didn't feel super inspired by in a lot of ways, like especially the pivot. It was just felt like a lot of grind in a moment that I needed time to really analyze and be conscious about what the hell just happened and understand myself. And honestly, it wasn't until getting into the inner circle where I did a lot of self-work prior to, but never as intentional as what we're doing here, and where I uncovered a lot of these past things that I now can see, these patterns that I was kind of walking with, and things that I would notice from like my dad, because there's a lot of things that, you know, like I mentioned, the habits that trailed off for him that led, I don't know if this is the cause, but I think they're definitely in the mix there. It's like, those are like 5 core habits or whatever that he lived by for as long as I'd known him. And that was a good, 36 years. So I'm like, man, when you just change that fast within a year, it just showed me how fast something can, like, don't take your eye off habits. You got to keep at least the core things that make you you. Because shit can get really dark really fast, especially if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling like you're away from your core group or people that love you and really care for you, know you. Not saying the girlfriend he had didn't love and care for him, but sure as hell didn't know the 30 plus years that I did and all the different things that made him who he was. And that's where I immediately started looking at myself and being like, okay, I now have a daughter in this world. Actually have another one coming up. So it's like all of these were in foster daughter that I'm still in touch with too. I'm like, I get to show up for these girls, and I sure as hell am going to learn from all these losses and crazy turbulent times that I just experienced. And like, I got to find meaning and figure out like, how do I avoid some of these things, these pitfalls that I'm seeing? One of my best friends, my dad, the world. It's kind of like, all of these layers, what do I make meaning, and how do I apply that to myself so I can show up better? And it's always crazy to tell these stories, but yeah, there's a lot more meaning than ever now. And I'm happy that you've heard a lot of these in depth. And I bring it up often, but in like different areas, because I don't know, we all have our dark moments, but the key thing is to like, what I've found is like really looking deeper into them and like, what's the meaning behind these things? And it could be something far in your past or something that just happened yesterday. And it's like, really just get to know like what happened, like be very clear, explicit about what was the scenario. And it's going to hurt. It's going to feel, it's not going to be comfortable thinking or writing this stuff out. But at the same time, when you bring it to your awareness, like right there in front of you, then you can figure out, it's like, okay, well, what was like, how are you feeling about that? Maybe back then, maybe now. Get very intentional about like, what can you make of this? But know that it is the past. It doesn't mean we need a default to that reaction or whatever that feeling was. Honor it. But what are you going to do about it now? And how do you learn? So, yeah, that's what honestly pumps me up the most and gets me lit up for even things on the business. I get pumped because I know the expression that I put out there, that's what's bringing these people to me into my circle. And yeah, I'm not going to question the fact that people are showing up because I'm like, you're hearing me. So I'm like, well, let's fucking do some cool stuff together. Let's co-create. That's the word that I keep thinking. And I think that's what people want. They want to do cool stuff with people and have a meaning and a purpose behind it. So I'll stop there for now.
Your story is incredible, man. I love it. From day one, when I heard about it, I'm like, this guy from San Diego. And I slowly started learning about your dad and infertility. And then now you have daughter number 2. And it's this trajectory that you're on, dude. You're pointed in the direction of the stratosphere and you're moving so fast. And I love it. Going back to your dad and the unfortunate circumstance around that, I think we both agree that we found the inner circle at a time that I don't want to say we were that low, but we weren't trending in the direction we wanted to. We weren't showing up in the ways that we wanted to. And there's all these euphemisms and metaphors and inspirational quotes online, but you just got to do the work. And that's the thing, is you can share all the shit you want to share. You can preach all the stuff you want to preach, but it's in the doing. And going back to when you say that your father's identity was cooking and running and all this stuff, it brings me back. I don't know exactly where I found this or the source behind it, but I heard this a while ago where it says you need to find your identity and not let something define you. Like don't allow a circumstance to define you. Don't allow infertility to define whether you're going to be a parent or not. Don't let a failure in business determine whether or not you're going to be a business person. Everybody has their core things that they're good at that they can leverage into whatever they want. There's this false mentality these days where people are told you can do whatever you want. There's no reason why you can't do anything and everything. And I don't think that's because there is a degree of truth to it, but I don't think it's prefaced enough with, I don't know a single person that is successful, whether it's a celebrity or an online personality or people that I know that haven't gone through the shit. They haven't gone through the hard stuff. Before you learn how to buy a polished system that knows how to do certain things, you got to know what it means. You got to know what went into it. You got to know how it applies to you. And the only way to do that is to know what doesn't apply to you, what doesn't work for you. And that's been a massive growth part for me, is rather than dwelling on my negatives and my past and my shortcomings and my failures, I learn from them. So because Tom Brady, who's my favorite athlete of all time, really said a ringing phrase in his Man in the Arena documentary. He said, once you know the right way, you can't unknow the right way. But the only way to know the right way is to experience the wrong way. I'm paraphrasing to a degree, but once you learn what works for you, because you can try keto, and keto might not be what works for you. Maybe you need to go on paleo. Maybe you need to go on the carnivore diet. Maybe everybody is different. But once you learn the right thing that makes it tick and makes it efficient for you, you're never going to go be like, well, let's just try paleo again, see what happens. It's like, no, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Focus on that, leverage your strengths, but recognize your weaknesses, but don't feel like you need to bring all your baselines up. You're allowed to have areas that you're not good at. You're allowed to have a podcast and say, I suck at blog posts. You're allowed to have a mechanic business and say, I really suck at this aspect of being a mechanic. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's been a massive growth part for me, because I've always struggled as a man and as a father and as somebody who's wanted to provide anything and everything for the women in my life, that I had to be good at everything. I had to be able to do all the shit. I had to be able to provide all the stuff, all the
that pressure we put on ourselves as men.
It really is. And I feel where that comes from is a lack of community, because when you feel like you don't have men to support you, you feel like not only do you have to be the man for yourself, you have to be the man for the immediate family. You have to be the curator of a community. You have to almost build it from scratch. And it just adds another layer of stress and pressure and weight. And it doesn't need to be the case. And I've said this in previous podcasts before, where I truly, truly believe that we've overvalued money and undervalued time. I cannot tell you how impressionable people have been with me when they're reliable, when if they say they're going to be there, they're there. If they give you your word, they stand by it. Words like integrity, words like respect, words like stoicism, those sorts of words, when people exude those traits, it means so much more to me than their income or the
Yeah.
size of their business or how many employees they have underneath them. It's something that is so lost nowadays because we are in such an individualized digital world, and podcasting, and you open my eyes to this, where something as simple as starting a podcast or guesting on a podcast or starting to listen to podcasts, really, it's such an authentic way to consume content. It truly, truly is. And there's a freaking podcast for anything. My
Yeah.
hairdresser, she's really into horses. She listens to a horse podcast. I think they
Cool.
have like 4 subscribers. It's crazy, but it's so real for her and so authentic to her identity. And I don't know any other medium. There's no movie that ticks every box. There's no music that ticks every box. It truly is this sort of content that brings it as close to the real person in that in-person community that you truly can get. That's my perspective and
Yeah.
opinion.
I'll say a couple things that come to mind is, well, I know a guy that he actually sold it, but he has a whole horse podcast network. So you joke about the horse podcast and the reality of it, but there's literally been a whole network of podcasts that's sold and everything. So there is literally anything out there, and you can make a business out of it if you choose to, but you don't need to. And let's see, a couple other things. So I want to touch on the time, and there's also the energy component. And then maybe remind me if I forget, but like there's also the curation of what we do as people like who host and have these stages. And it could be any kind of stage. But the time and energy thing, like we all have 24 hours. It's how we decide to use them or invest those hours, because not every hours is created equal. I feel like we can control it in a way because it's our energy is like the other component when it comes to time. And it's like, how do you feel, or what do you think that literally the energy that you're putting in? So the energy can be literal typing on keyboards or speaking. It's like, are you coming across in an energy and like a light energy, one that's actually empowering, one that you want to put out there and project on the top of the mountain and shout it? Like that feeling, it should be a hell yes kind of feeling. And like Derek Sivers, he made a CD Baby back in the day, sold it, and he's a pretty big name. He's awesome. And he's like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And that's his saying. So it's like you could be spending time in a whole bunch of places and you might think it's the right place, but it's like, does it feel right? Is it a hell yes kind of energy, like a light energy that comes through? Because it's definitely going to come through to the other person. We're all reading woo woo or not, whatever. Like we're feeling the vibes, and there's different labels for all this stuff. And so I'm starting now to be a lot more deliberate about like, what's my energy feel like and look like, not only to myself, but to other people. And so it's a time thing, yes. And then also I would add in that layer of, well, shit, is that light energy or like dark energy? Is this like where I'm like pissed off that I'm doing this task? Should I not even be doing this? Should I delegate it? Should I kill the task? Should I automate it somehow? Like we have the tools, things like AI can do a lot of this shit for us now. And that's honestly a lot of like admin work that really most people probably don't. Some people enjoy it. Won't say everyone, but let's be honest, like it doesn't have to be all us doing everything. So I would challenge anyone listening to, yeah, do the time audit, see where your time is going, but also apply. Is this like an energy? And I think it's Dan Martell. I had him on my podcast. I think he said, he's like, do a little like up arrow, if it's like good energy, bad energy, down arrow, or maybe neutral. And that's all right too. But then at least it helps you kind of frame what you're doing right now and do that for a while, like audit that for like 7 days, 14 days, whatever. And then back to, there's a other point that we talked about or that you're bringing up. And this comes to like how I see my podcast. I think this is how you see yours as well. And is like curating this positive impact, this ripple, in starting with ourselves, our time, our energy, and the thing we want to express, but also knowing, and this is when I had this aha moment, I don't know, it was years ago now, I was like, holy crap, I'm in a really cool position because I get to curate people on my show who not only I get to get the input from them and have this conversation of value, but I get to share it with this whole wider world. And it could be just 4 people, it could be 4,000 people, whatever. And know that I am actually the source of this, like the one that's connecting people. And I now am like asking and conversing with these folks to then create this ripple that will now affect other people's lives that I'll probably never know. Because like podcast listeners, you don't know most of them. You barely hear from most of them at all. But that's okay. It doesn't mean it's not a one-to-one personal connection, because guarantee if you ran into these people like in a conference, which I have many times, they start talking to you like they're your best friend because they know all this shit about you. You're like, whoa. You're like, first time it gets a little weird because you're like, wow, all right, you paid attention. What's your name? It's like, but at the same time, it proves how much of an impact that when you're expressing, podcasting being one, but let's be honest, if you're doing this, showing up on Instagram every day or often and sharing something like truthfully from you, or even, curating someone else on your channel, you can do that with Instagram. It's like people are going to start feeling the same way there too. And I think that's what really pumps me up, is knowing that I'm the source of that curation. I get to bring the right people together, ask the right things, have that impactful conversation, and then know that that's going to be this network effect, this like butterfly effect that goes out into the world and truly improve people's lives, however I choose.
I don't think it's a new concept. I think this is very old school, maybe early 1900s, when men were really, there was no technology. It was the community you had, and that was it. There was no way to be digital. But now it's something that it's hard to compute because the new generation doesn't know what that looks like.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I feel when you're able to curate that and you get to that personal one-on-one level, and somebody who may not have met you in person, but they feel that connection and you can relate to them, and you may never hear how positively you impacted a business, but just the idea to know that there's a chance that what you did had an impact, I think that is a massive motivator to keep going. That's a massive motivator that hits home for a lot of people. It's fantastic when you get the feedback. Don't get me wrong.
Oh,
When I
yeah.
released my first couple episodes and we were like, dude, that was fire. That was amazing. It fired me up. I was super stoked about it. Even before I recorded my first podcast, to build the studio out and learn all this stuff and learn how this whole community is so tight knit and so closely they're there for each other. They truly are. It truly feels like a community. I feel like that's just such a cool concept. You share that one inspirational quote that you put into practice. That's the key. That's the second side of that coin, is you can't just talk the talk. You got to walk the walk. You can't stand still. You got to move forward. So I love that, man. That whole messaging and that whole concept, and bringing it back to podcasting, which is obviously your bread and butter. And it's certainly my cherry on the cupcake right now. I'm just starting off, but it's so cool, man. I
It's
love
going to
it.
be a
I've been
cake soon, man, a full cake.
Yeah, well, I've been a consumer for a long time, so I've understood that whole concept and the etiquette behind it. I never knew the work that went into it, and I know some people have systems that are better than others, but if you want to be the do it all, be it all, it takes some effort, but it's super gratifying and rewarding to build something of your own, to start from scratch, put in the
Yeah.
work. It's super cool, man.
Well, dude, and I think expressing and just getting it started is the hardest thing. I mean, for anybody, it's the whole momentum, momentum's real. And that's why I got to give big props to you for, I mean, you literally built a studio, so you just committed. And I think that was before you even recorded a first episode, right? Like all the equipment, you did it right. It's not necessary, but at the same time, that's how you wanted to approach it. And that just showed your level of commitment. And I knew you had that in you already. But like, just to talking to those listening, it's like we all have phones. We all have pretty good cameras and microphones on these things these days. So use them and figure out how to express yourself, and just don't hold back. Like, I think that's the thing I would tell myself, because yes, I have a packed schedule and all these things, and I'm always watching things, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm like, how do I express a little bit more? Like, how do I get out there and put more out there? Like, I would love to do more Instagram stories and show up on the social medias, and I just don't do it often, to be honest. I think I've contained myself in a lot of ways. So that's why I'm like, all right, you know what? The podcast, I got to leverage the shit out of what I record here and make sure I'm getting video, audio, social, and then having a team to do it for me. But if I were starting, I would literally just get my phone out and start chatting to Instagram or wherever people are, or throw on the microphone and just get some, like, I don't know, just something that's not going to be overwhelming to get started, just enough to get it out there and express. And literally, like, magical things happen when you just show up and just start talking. And knowing that you're maybe talking to a person, like having someone in mind, that's going to help kind of refine your message. But to genuinely express yourself and to know that you're doing it for not only yourself, but for others, just good shit happens. And staying consistent is the key, because it's easy to drop off. So it's like, get started, but figure out how to sustain that and make it a habit, because I think that's where it gets really fun, when you start to ingrain that in your being and know like this expression is actually helping you grow internally. And then at the same time, you get to help others. So it's like, well, shit, that's a win-win, exponentially win-win. If you think about it.
That's awesome. We're going to end it there. I appreciate your time, dude. You're an absolute beauty. You're a huge inspiration for me, both personally and professionally. And I can't wait to just keep doing this inner circle thing. I feel like I might be ending a podcast episode, but I think we're going to be chatting here in like 5-6 hours with our WhatsApps and stuff. So it's one of those things that it just works, man. It's so good. But dude, I truly appreciate it. I don't know if you want to leave anybody who's listening with a grain or a plug or whatever you feel like, just to end it on a Joe note. Leave it there.
Yeah. I mean, this was me, real talk, just raw. And Alfred, I got to give you props, man, for giving me the stage, letting me share it with you. And I'm so stoked to see you doing this, because I know how much, I mean, you're so damn eloquent too. I listen to you on Instagram when you're posting these things and either writing or speaking it out. I'm like, holy shit, this guy's fucking brilliant. And literally, like, I think that and I smile and I'm like, hell yeah. And so I'm happy that you're putting it out there, because literally, like, everyone has the ability to do it. And yeah, if it's written form, go do it. Speaking form, do it. Camera form, great. Go dance around and be crazy. But it's like, you're going to inspire someone to do some cool shit. So I guess I'll leave it at that, because I love doing that. I love bringing people together. And I feel like that's what we need right now. You mentioned that a lot of us are feeling very isolated, divided. I mean, we see it in every walk of life. I don't need to name it all now. So we're having wars, multiple. I mean, it's just like, it's chaos in the world. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be internally. So it's like, find your ground. That's why I'm standing on a Shakti Poke mat this whole time. My feet have been numb, but I didn't even notice. I feel great. But the point is, like, do your part to like ground yourself, and then give. Figure out how to give, because guarantee you're going to change some lives and you're going to bring people together. You might not ever meet them, but I bet you're just stick with it, and cool stuff will happen. And let me know. Go hit me up on well, hey, I'll just give my email address. So joe@hustleandflowchart.com. Email me if you have any questions, got some thoughts or crazy ideas. I'm open. You can find me on social. Joe Feard, F-I-E-R is the last name. And go listen to Hustle and Flowchart. You can find it pretty much anywhere. So hustleandflowchart.com is the website. You can kind of peek at all the stuff there. That's what I got, Alfred, man. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, you as well, man. It's been awesome. And yeah, for anybody that has a business, wants to start a business, is struggling with business, anything like that, I can promise there's at least one of the 500 plus episodes you got that'll bring some value.
No doubt.
I don't want to give people too much homework to scroll through that whole library, but there's some interesting stuff in there, man. So I think your messaging and stuff it's obviously working, because it's obviously your business, but at the same time, it's very relatable. So that's definitely my favorite part of you, amongst many, many others. But no, thanks so much for your time today, dude.
I'll leave one more thing. Actually, you just reminded me, because I like, a quick way to, instead of searching the libraries, I made it's totally free, but it's this bot. It's like a clone of the episodes, and you could just ask it questions. So it actually pulls information from episodes. This is like a newer AI technology, but go check it out. It's hustleandflowchart.com/bot, B-O-T. And literally you could just ask it anything. So instead of searching the libraries, just go ask that thing, and it'll probably pull out what you need. And it's like actionable. It actually remembers what you're talking about and like scenarios. So give it a test. I'm curious, and let me know what you thought about it.
Just another incredible thing, man. I didn't even know about that. And you're just,
I know. I forget about it half the time. I'm like, Jesus.
Incredible. People are going to start emailing you how to do that, man. Because honestly, that sounds incredible. So thank you again, man. I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much for your time. And thanks anybody for listening to the Unmodern podcast. We'll catch you in the next one.
Peace.
Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Unmodern podcast. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also like and follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Unmodern Podcast. Do you have suggestions for future guests, or if you're interested in being a guest yourself, please visit unmodernpodcast.com. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next episode.